I've been playing Minecraft for years, and I've never kept a world going for more than a few months. So I'm attempting to keep this world going for as long as I can, with the ultimate goal of creating an immersive etherpunk city. And I'm bringing you along for every step of my journey. Welcome to my forever world. So far, I've built a starter house, a few farms, and the first building of the city, the library. In this episode, I want to continue to build up the city by creating a building for farmer villagers to trade with. I also want to build another farm, this time a melon and pumpkin farm, so I can trade those to the farmers. So let's start off by making that melon and pumpkin farm. And you see, I don't want to follow a tutorial. I think I should be able to figure out something on my own. So I'll work you through that process of how I design my own farm based on the principles of redstone that I learned from other farms. But I have one problem. And it looks like I've ran out of redstone dust. So I think it's time for a quick mining session. Mining session complete, and we got quite a bit of redstone and 48 more diamonds, which isn't too bad, especially because I'm going to start using them to duplicate armor trims in the near future. But that's for another episode, because it's time for everybody's favorite segment, my crappy redstone tutorials. Now you see, I want to build a melon and pumpkin farm, and I don't know about you, but I have some bad memories of building melons and pumpkin farms when I played Bedrock specifically. Now Java's a little bit different, but I built a melon and pumpkin farm on a realm before we could crawl on Bedrock, and I spent a lot of time fixing those minecarts. So I'm not gonna build the typical cube-shaped melon and pumpkin farm like most people build in their worlds. I'm gonna build something a little bit different, and I'm going to take you through my step-by-step thought process of what I'm building. So I've got a little platform here where my next build is actually going to go. The melon and pumpkin farms are actually going to be on the inside of the next building in the city. So I built up a little area here just so I can get a base and a small version so I can explain how this farm and my thought process of how this farm should work. So I built some scaffolding up, and we'll place the dirt where the melon and pumpkins will grow. All right, so we've got the dirt placed, and we need some area for the redstone to be placed. So I've got a ton of iron, so might as well use that. We'll put some mangrove roots there, and then we will waterlog the mangrove roots. This way it will hydrate the soil where the pumpkins and melons will be growing. And then in every other block, we'll put a piston, and then this direction we will put observers facing where the melon and pumpkins are going to be planted, and a solid block or slab, doesn't matter, behind each observer. And behind each observer we'll put a piece of redstone. And then here comes where I might do things a little bit different than some people. I'm going to put a target block by each piece of redstone. This way it will redirect the redstone into the pistons. I don't know if this is the most effective way, but it works for me. And then we take our hoe and you can put in there. And then I need to grab some melon and pumpkin seeds. And with those pumpkin and melon seeds obtained, we'll plant just a few. And remember, this is just a small sample of what this farm can be. So this is not going to be the finalized size. And that's the basis of how this works. So the observers will watch the melons and pumpkins grow. Once these stems fully grow up, which I don't have any bone meal, I would bone meal them to grow them a little bit faster. Then they'll grow onto the blocks where the pistons are. The observers will catch that growing and then break the melons and pumpkins. I plan to use a hopper minecart on a minecart rail one block below. So if we put some powered rails on the ends with some regular rails, with the idea of hopper minecart going back and forth, picking up the drops whenever they're dropped. This is where I had a little bit of fun in my design. And I don't know if this is the most effective design or the best way to do this, but it is my design. So if we place down a double chest or a single chest with a hopper facing into it, that way the hopper minecart will drop off the drops. And then we place down a powered rail on top of the hopper, and this is where the hopper minecart will be powered to go onto the rail line. To make sure we don't block the hopper, we need to have a couple blocks away from the hopper itself so we can put a redstone torch on the same level as the powered rail. And at this point, this farm should be operational once we place down the hopper minecart. The only problem with this farm is that I don't want this hopper minecart running back and forth constantly. I only want it running when there's drops in the farm. So we're gonna turn off this redstone torch, stopping the minecart on the hopper by using a T flip-flop with a copper bulb. So if I place down a comparator that will face into a copper bulb and turn on that copper bulb, it will stop the minecart by turning off the powered rail on top of the hopper. So once each of the observers trigger, I need to send that signal to the copper bulb, turning it on and off in one sequence. So if I place observers facing into the redstone, place observers facing down, and I'm gonna need a few more observers, we can send a signal to the copper bulb. However, it would just turn on or off the copper bulb because they tick back and forth too quick. So there's a little trick I'm going to show here. So essentially from these observers here, we could power redstone facing down here, and then we need that redstone to power this twice. So one of the easiest ways I've found to do that. So if we have an observer facing here and then a piston in front of it with a repeater powering the piston, with some delay, then we should be good. So at this point, whenever this module here triggers, the observer will power this, and then it will trigger the piston to extend and then retract, turning off the copper bulb for just a couple ticks, sending the hopper minecart to go pick up the drops, and then it'll turn back on the copper bulb when the piston drops, and then this powered rail will stop, and then the hopper minecart will stop here. So now, if we want every module, we'll just place a piece of redstone dust there, and then put an observer observing the redstone. So if this one gets triggered from here, it'll send a chain over here triggering the piston, and then we have it. We have my version of a pumpkin and melon farm. And again, this is just a small module. The overall design that I'm working on is going to fill a large majority of a building similar to this size. So it's not going to be a massive pumpkin and melon farm, but it'll be sufficient for what I need in this world. And there we have it, my version of a melon and pumpkin farm. So in a previous life, I was actually an engineer. So problem solving in Minecraft is a ton of fun for me. I'm definitely not the best at redstone yet, but I'm working on it. Funny enough, I want to grow up to be like Mumbo Jumbo, even though I'm pretty sure we're the same age. But he's had a few more years at this YouTube thing than I have, so eventually I may get to his level. But anyway, it was a lot of fun to come up with this design, specifically looking to find a solution to make sure that minecart doesn't run all the time. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And with this smaller version of the Melon and Pumpkin Farm built, it's time to start gathering the materials for the larger version, as well as the materials for the next build in the city. So I think it's time for a material gathering montage. But this time, I want to do something a little fun. I'm going to rank each item or block that I'm gathering and put it on a tier list. So without further ado, let's get going. Starting off with a strong material, quartz. Now I can go either A or S tier with quartz, but you know what? I'm going to say S tier. Nether quartz is really good for redstone, in this case a lot of observers that need to be crafted, as well as a whole bunch of beautiful building blocks. So I'm not ashamed to say that nether quartz is S tier. Next we have basalt, which really only functions as a building block. It makes a good accent for a lot of the darker grays. But overall, not a ton of applications. I give basalt a solid B tier. And then we have blaze rods, a solid item that helps you beat the game and create some decorative blocks like end rods and some redstone components like copper bulbs. Although it is a little bit difficult to get having to go to the nether and fight blaze, I'd give blaze rods a solid B tier with end rods and copper bulbs being A tier blocks. Next, we have the new dried grass, which is pretty nice for detailing, but I'd give it a C tier. Red terracotta is kind of a niche block, but it doesn't have too bad of a texture, but no applications outside of decoration, and red's not my favorite to build with, even though I'm building with it this time around, so this is another C tier. However, this new pig texture, S tier. All the way, S tier. Next up, a classic, sand, which is used in a lot of different crafting materials and is used to make glass, but there's other ways to get glass, so sand is a B tier. And then we have mud, which I'm not using mud by itself, so I'd give mud a C tier, but the packed mud and packed mud bricks, those both get a B tier. Not my favorite blocks, but are pretty good. Now here is a hot take. We've got copper and all the copper varieties. I think copper is an S tier building block. And if you disagree with me, you can just come at me in the comments. You're probably gonna see copper in just about every single build in this world. And not just because it's gonna be Etherpunk and there's gonna be lots of gears, but because I love it. Clay, clay, clay. Now this is a bad block by itself. What it turns into, bricks, isn't too bad. So clay balls and clay itself, D tier. Bricks, solid B tier. And I'll give clay a D tier just because I don't use it at all in anything. And I'll use bricks occasionally. But clay balls, at least in the early game, are especially such a pain to get. And if you're playing in Bedrock, you can't even use the scuba door to get the clay balls. And most of the time, I forget this is even in the game. And I'd get bricks for masons anyway. And next up, we have amethyst in all the variety. Now I'm tempted to give amethyst a low tier. It doesn't have that much use other than being decorative, making spy glasses and tinted glass. So it feels like it needs to be a D tier, but just because it makes such a beautiful noise when you walk and break it, I'm gonna up this all the way to B tier. And if you disagree with me, again, let me know in the comments. Firefly bushes. They should have been in the game forever ago. They're a solid B tier. They'd be A if their animation was varied a little bit, but maybe we'll get that eventually. And last but not least, we have mangrove wood. Unfortunately, I built my farm in the wrong place and couldn't use it to blow up the trees for me. So this is gonna get a C tier, just because it's such a pain to manually harvest. If it wasn't, it'd be a B tier. But at least because I had to go to a mangrove swamp, I was able to find some new friends, which eventually will let me get frog lights, which in my opinion, are high A tier, especially the verdant frog lights. They are by far one of my favorite light sources in the game. So what do you think? My tier list is pretty based, isn't it? Let's take a look where we ended up. We got 3, which really should be 4 in S tier. The quartz, the warm pig variant, and anything copper. And I do need to move that copper bulb into S tier after thinking about it. I think everything else is pretty fair. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But anyway, the whole purpose of that was to get a whole bunch of materials for this build. And this time around, I'm doing something a little bit different than the library, adding a lot of red into the build. So we're gonna use a lot of mangrove planks, even some netherrack, and some bricks. Of course, I needed to use some of my favorite blocks, the warped planks and warp stem. So materials are gathered, tier lists are made, and it's time to get building. So cue that time-lapse music. Larger farm is built, and as you can see, it's just a bigger copy of the small sample farm that I built earlier. It's not massive, but it should be good enough for what I need them for, which is really just to trade melons and pumpkins to villagers. One thing to point out is I did a little bit of an auto crafter setup here, so they're crafting melons automatically for me. But we have a lot to build, so let's get back to the time lapse. And building is done. So let's hop into Cheaty Cam really quick and we can go through this whole thing. I kept a really dark red as the base color of the building, and it works really well with the brick and the mangrove, and then there's some of the darker nether rack mixed in. It works really well with the tuff, having a greenish color, the green being a complementary color to the red, as well as the greenish color in the warp stem. I kept the roof pretty simple, and we won't talk about the back. Don't worry, that's going to be covered up, so I'm not super worried about having tons of detail back there. And on the side, just like the library where the sides and the back aren't super detailed, because there's going to be other things blocking the view. So overall, I think it turned out pretty good. I'm missing a couple items just because I need to get some frog lights. So if we turn on the Lightmatica schematic, there's frog lights. And then down here where the moss is at, I actually put frog lights there in my original design. I'm not crazy into lore, but I think it's really good for some storytelling aspects in builds, and you can add some creativity. So with this gear, it's not super realistic that it's out here, and it would need something else to power it, right? There's not really any power sources, but since magic is the power source in my Etherpunk world, that's where the amethyst comes in to represent. So in this world, whenever you see amethyst, it is what's used to power my gears and cogs and stuff wirelessly from a source that is yet to be talked about. I'll just leave it as that. I've got plans for a really cool power source item that I'm gonna connect to all these amethysts to wirelessly power all of my mechanics. But there may be a downside to it because the power for this whole build comes in here, and something's going on. It's starting to spread, which I think we'll get into that later. So the only thing I'm missing here is some minecarts with chests and these rails, and then I need gray carpet on top of these rails. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I know there's a few more details that I need to flush out, but overall, I am very happy with this. It was a ton of fun to design. So all we need to do for this build to finish it off is get the frog lights, which I'll do next episode, and then move in all the farmers, put the minecarts with chest on the rails, as well as the gray carpet to cover up the rails. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll check back in a second. About ready to tie a bow on this and call it finished. Let's go ahead and take a look inside and see what I've added since we last looked. So we've got all our farmers in place. If I need more, I can always bring more in. Here's a cool little effect. Putting the chest minecart on rails with carpets above kind of makes it look like it's a moving item on a conveyor belt. I need to flesh out the design a little bit better, but overall it adds some life to the build. I got that idea with the minecarts on the rails from a BOO video, so credit where credit's due. Last thing that I added here was my micro crop farm. This way I can level up the villagers so they eventually will trade for pumpkins and melons a lot easier. So this works pretty quick and should help me get all the basic crops I need. I want to do one more thing before I finish up this episode, and it has to do with these builds a little bit. See, this area is slowly coming along, and it's gonna need a lot of work. I'm just gonna chip away at it slowly over time, taking care of all this grass. But around this area, I think we need to start designing the road. So I'm thinking for the sidewalk, we do the edge of the sidewalk in polished andesite, and then we do regular andesite up to the buildings, and then maybe add some variation, some stone, maybe some cobble where it's falling apart, and then like gray wool, just to make it interesting. But this is kind of the barrier, and then use some cobbled deep slate slabs. That way I don't have to worry as much about the road being spawn safe. I don't have to light it up 100%. And it adds an interesting, instead of just being flat, it adds a level and you don't have to jump, that you can just walk over. So let me go see if I have a bunch of andesite and see what I can come up with. And then on the next magical cut, we should have somewhat of a beginnings of a road. And road. So it's not super detailed yet, but this small little sample of just adding like a little bit of a sidewalk and then a road, which needs a lot of detail still. It's a little bland by itself, just being the cobble deep slate. But the idea is this makes it seem like they're not just set in the middle of nowhere in the ground. Adding the sidewalk and the road just makes things feel more cohesive overall and adds a ton to the build. I really like it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you have any ideas of what I could do to detail the road specifically. I have some ideas for some street lamps and some like garbage cans and benches and stuff like that to make things seem a little bit more immersive. I need to look up some reference images because I'm trying to keep this not like futuristic, but sort of the period of when the steampunk and etherpunk theme would be. But anyway, I think this is where I'm gonna wrap it up for today. We did a lot in this episode. We set up a pumpkin and melon farm. We built a whole nother building and we started laying out the roads of the city. It's gonna be a lot of work ahead, but I think this city is gonna look really cool once we get things even more going. Once there's more buildings, then eventually this becomes a massive city. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you a ton. Like always, you guys are legends. And if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and I am just a little over 300 away. So any subscriber helps. But anyway, thank you so much and I'll catch you in the next one.